You keep telling yourself time will heal it, that one day you'll wake up and it just won't hurt anymore, but that day never comes, does it? Carl Jung warned us, what you don't confront in the unconscious becomes your fate. Freud, who said, buried trauma returns, not as memory but as behavior. You will never heal until you do this one thing with your trauma. Most people never figure it out, but today you will. There is a moment, often invisible even to the person living it, when the soul begins to break beneath the weight of unacknowledged pain, when the body starts speaking the words the mind refuses to say, and when the heart folds into silence, not because it is healed, but because it has grown tired of asking to be seen. Trauma, in this deeper psychological sense, is not merely an event that happened in the past, but something that continues to live in the present, shaping the texture of our thoughts, the flavor of our relationships, and the very architecture of our identity. Carl Jung and Sigmund Freud, two giants of psychological thought, diverged on many things, but they agreed on one fundamental truth. What remains unconscious will govern your life until it is brought into the light. Freud believed that the repressed, the memories, the feelings, the desires that we push down, does not disappear. Rather, it festers, disguised as anxiety, addiction, depression, or psychosomatic illness. Jung took this one step further, arguing that trauma buries itself not only in the personal unconscious, but also in the collective shadow, where it becomes mythologized, distorted, and eventually projected onto the world. And yet, here lies the most painful paradox of healing. Most people spend their lives either running from their trauma, numbing it, denying it, or worse, spiritualizing it too quickly, talking about letting go or moving on without ever truly sitting in the fire. But the fire, Jung would say, is not your enemy. The fire is the very thing that can forge your soul into something more whole, more resilient, and paradoxically, more human. You will never heal until you do this one terrifying, soul-altering thing. You must turn around, descend into the underworld of your own psyche, and face what you have been unwilling to face. To heal from trauma is not to erase it, and it is certainly not to pretend it never happened. Healing, in the depth psychological sense, is to integrate what once shattered you. Freud's concept of abreaction, the process of reliving and expressing traumatic memories, was his early attempt at this. But Jung took it deeper by recognizing that the trauma becomes part of your shadow, the disowned part of your psyche that holds not only your fears, shame, and pain, but also your vitality, creativity, and power. And so, when you avoid your trauma, you don't just avoid your suffering. You avoid the parts of yourself that could bring you back to life. You cannot think your way out of trauma. You cannot rationalize it away, nor can you bypass it with positive thinking, spiritual slogans, or the polished aesthetic of healing journeys posted online. The real work is brutal. It is quiet. It is slow. And it often begins in isolation. When you finally stop distracting yourself and instead sit in the rawness of what happened, not just with your intellect, but with your whole being. Jung said, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. This is the crux of it. You will never heal until you stop avoiding the darkness and begin the sacred, dangerous task of making it conscious. Trauma creates fragmentation. You feel cut off from your body, from your voice, from your instincts, and even from time itself. A part of you remains trapped in the moment the pain began, replaying it in your relationships, your decisions, your self-concept. This is why trauma survivors often feel like they're living in loops, dating the same person in different bodies, repeating the same patterns despite their best efforts, or sabotaging moments of peace because chaos feels more familiar. Until you integrate the trauma, it is not really in the past. It is right here, influencing everything silently, invisibly, persistently. But here's the key. You must relate to your trauma, not just relive it. This is where Jung diverges most sharply from Freud. While Freud emphasized the importance of catharsis and uncovering repressed memories, Jung believed that healing came from creating a new relationship with the traumatic material. This means viewing your trauma not as a curse, but as a potential teacher, not in a romanticized or reductive way, but in a deeply personal and transformative one. The trauma itself may not be your fault, but the relationship you form with it. That is where your power lies, and this is the this that no one wants to talk about. You must befriend the part of you that was hurt, betrayed, or abandoned. You must go back and sit with that version of yourself, the child, the teenager, the woman or man who didn't know how to survive. And you must offer them what no one else could. You must become the one who stays, who listens, who validates the unspeakable. You must allow yourself to grieve, not just what happened, but what should have happened. Because healing is not only the digestion of pain, it is the mourning of love unmet, safety denied, dignity stolen. Jung called this process individuation, the journey of becoming whole. And wholeness does not mean perfection. It means embracing every broken, discarded, misunderstood piece of yourself and weaving it back into the tapestry of your identity. It means moving from fragmentation to integration, from silence to expression, from hiding to presence. And this journey, while deeply personal, is also archetypal. It mirrors the mythological descent into the underworld, the death and rebirth motif found in every great story. You are not just a person in pain, you are a soul undergoing initiation, and here is where the real magic begins. Not the magic of illusion, but the magic of transformation. Because when you do the unthinkable and meet your trauma with open eyes and an open heart, something begins to shift. The nightmares become symbols. The triggers become signposts. The pain, once overwhelming, becomes a source of compassion for others who suffer. You no longer need to protect yourself with anger or numbness or control. You begin to trust your nervous system again, your instincts, your ability to feel without drowning. But none of this is possible if you continue to outsource your healing. No therapist, no friend, no book or video can do this work for you. They can guide, support, witness, but you must be the one who walks into the inner wilderness and faces what has been waiting for you in the dark. You must stop abandoning yourself. In the same way the trauma once did, you must learn to stay. Freud said that neurosis is the result of a conflict between the ego and the unconscious, and that healing comes when this conflict is resolved. Jung added that the soul doesn't want to be cured, it wants to be understood. And so, healing is not about fixing yourself. It is about meeting yourself, perhaps for the first time, in the sacred place where pain and truth collide. You will never heal until you stop trying to escape your story and instead begin to rewrite it. Not by changing the facts, but by changing the relationship you have with them. Until you see the wound not only as a place of suffering, but also as a portal to your authenticity. Until you stop looking for closure and start seeking integration. Until you stop asking, how do I get rid of this pain? And start asking, what does this pain have to teach me about who I really am? This is the work Jung and Freud pointed toward, each in their own way. And it is the work that will set you free, not instantly, not completely, and not without cost. But over time, as you sit with the darkness and allow it to soften, you will discover something unexpected. Your trauma does not define you, but your courage to face it does. And in that moment, when you finally stop running and begin to listen, you will realize that healing was never about forgetting. It was always about remembering who you were before the world told you to hide. And this remembering, it is not a return to innocence, but a resurrection of essence. You are not trying to go back to who you were before the trauma. You are becoming someone new because of it. That's the truth. Few people speak about healing. It's not about restoration, but transformation. Once you've walked through the fire, you are never the same. And that's not a tragedy. It's a kind of initiation into a deeper life, a more honest life, a life that can hold paradox, grief, joy, and meaning all at once. In the language of Jung, this process is deeply alchemical. Just as the alchemist sought to transmute base metals into gold, the psyche seeks to transmute suffering into wisdom, not to deny the pain, but to extract from it the insight, the clarity, the strength that could never have been forged in comfort. And make no mistake, this alchemy is not metaphorical. It is emotional, cellular, embodied. You begin to move differently in the world. You become more discerning, more grounded. Your boundaries grow stronger, not because you're hardened, but because you're rooted. Your compassion deepens, not because you're naive, but because you know the terrain of pain so intimately. But let's not romanticize it. The road to integration is disorienting. There will be days when the wound feels fresh again, days when old memories surface with new details, days when the body shakes, the tears flow without warning, and you wonder if you're really healing or just unraveling. This is where Freud's understanding of the repetition compulsion becomes essential. How the mind repeats past trauma in new scenarios, seeking mastery, seeking closure. But until it is made conscious, this repetition is suffering without meaning. When it is made conscious, it becomes ritual. And rituals, Jung taught us, are the psyche's way of digesting the sacred. And trauma is sacred, not because it is holy in itself, but because the response to it demands depth, attention, and reverence. We live in a culture that wants quick fixes. A culture that pathologizes pain and medicates away symptoms without listening to their message. But pain is not the enemy. Pain is the messenger. Pain is the psyche's cry for wholeness. And unless we learn to listen, to truly listen, we will continue to carry the wound like a ghost, haunting our relationships, our work, our dreams. It is only when we stop seeing the wound as weakness and begin to see it as invitation that something radical becomes possible. Healing not just for ourselves, but for others. Because trauma, when transmuted, becomes medicine. The man who has grieved deeply can hold space for others. The woman who has learned to soothe her own inner child can mother the world differently. The survivor who speaks their truth becomes a light in someone else's darkness. This is how we break cycles, not by erasing the past, but by transforming our relationship to it. Jung called this transformation the journey toward the self, a process that requires facing both the shadow and the divine within. Not one without the other. You will meet the parts of you you've hated, the parts you've blamed, the parts that froze in fear or fought for survival in ways you now judge. And you must embrace them. You must forgive what you did to survive. You must give yourself permission to be unfinished, to be flawed, to be in process. Because true healing is not linear. It spirals, it revisits, it deepens. And one day, you'll wake up and realize that the pain no longer controls you. The memories are still there, but they no longer dictate your choices. The triggers still arise, but they no longer define your identity. You still cry, but the tears are cleaner, less tangled in shame, more connected to truth. You are not healed in the way you imagined, but you are whole in a way you never dreamed possible. And wholeness, Jung said, includes the broken parts. The self is not a sanitized version of you. It is the totality of you. The scared child, the angry teenager, the numbed adult, the wise witness. All of it. All of you, integrated, loved, seen. This, then, is what you must do with your trauma. You must make it sacred. You must turn toward it, name it, grieve it, learn from it, integrate it. Not because it makes the past okay, but because it frees your future. Because every time you choose to face your pain with courage, you interrupt generations of silence. Every time you speak the truth your body has been holding, you dismantle the systems that keep others trapped. Every time you hold yourself with tenderness, you offer the world a new map for love. Healing is not an endpoint, it is a way of being, a way of walking through the world with softness and strength. A way of remembering again and again that you are not what happened to you, you are what you choose to become in the aftermath. And so I leave you with this. You will never heal until you stop running from your pain and start asking what it's trying to show you. You will never heal until you stop trying to go back to who you were and start becoming who you are meant to be. You will never heal until you stop waiting for someone else to fix it and instead begin the slow, sacred work of becoming your own healer. And when you do, when you finally sit with your pain, cradle it like the child it once was, and offer it your full presence, you will discover that the wound was never just a wound. It was a doorway. And beyond it, waiting patiently all along, is you, whole, human, here. And maybe this is the truth we've been avoiding. Not out of weakness, but because the soul knows the weight of it. The truth that to fully heal is not to eliminate all pain, but to transform our relationship with it. To stop fearing it, to stop resenting it, and instead to learn how to sit with it, how to listen to it, how to glean meaning from its silence. Carl Jung wrote, "Only the wounded physician heals." What he meant was that only the one who has faced their own suffering can hold space for the suffering of others. Not with pity, but with presence. And this is the final phase of trauma's alchemy. It becomes not just a personal wound, but a collective offering. Your story, once buried in shame, becomes a bridge. Your struggle, once hidden in fear, becomes a voice for others who haven't yet found their own. Freud once said that dreams are the royal road to the unconscious. But Jung went further. He saw life itself as the dream, rich with symbols, synchronicities, and deeper meanings waiting to be uncovered. And when you work with your trauma in the way both Freud and Jung described, not as something to discard, but something to understand, you begin to decode the symbols of your own life, the patterns, the projections, the ways you keep attracting what hurt you, until you learn to see, choose, and act differently. Healing, then, is not just psychological. It's existential, it's spiritual. It requires the courage to see yourself not just as a victim of your past, but as a participant in your becoming. It demands responsibility, not blame, not guilt, but responsibility, the ability to respond, to choose, to rebuild, not from a fantasy of who you were supposed to be, but from the raw, honest truth of who you are. And this honesty is not harsh, it is liberating. It doesn't trap you in pain. It frees you from pretending. It allows you to finally exhale, to finally admit, yes, this happened to me, yes, it hurt. And yes, I am still here, still breathing, still becoming, still worthy of love, even in the mess, especially in the mess. Because it's in the mess that the soul grows. It's in the ache that the heart expands. It's in the stillness after the storm that we begin to hear the quiet voice inside that says, you are not broken, you are breaking open. And in that breaking open, something remarkable happens. You begin to trust yourself again. Slowly, yes, cautiously, but undeniably. You begin to trust your own emotions, your own instincts, your own sense of timing. You no longer rush the process. You no longer perform for love. You begin to build a life not around what others expect of you, but around what is real, what is sacred, what brings you peace. And perhaps that's the most profound shift of all, when peace becomes your compass. Not perfection, not control, not avoidance, just peace. Inner peace, the kind that doesn't require your past to disappear, but simply to rest in its rightful place, as part of your story, not the whole of it. And when you live from this place, others will notice, not because you tell them you've healed, but because they feel it in your presence, in your ability to pause, to listen without needing to fix, to hold space without shrinking, to love without losing yourself. That's when you know the trauma has been transmuted. That's when you know the wound has become wisdom. That's when you know you've come home, not to the past, but to yourself. So if you are still in the middle of it, still in the pain, still in the confusion, still in the ache of what was, know this: you are not behind. You are not failing. You are not broken beyond repair. You are in the middle of becoming someone who has faced their shadow and survived. Becoming someone who carries their scars with dignity. Becoming someone who is no longer defined by what happened, but by how they choose to live now. And that choice, that sacred, powerful, quiet choice to keep going, to keep showing up, to keep healing, that is the work of a lifetime, and it is worth every step. So do not rush it, do not numb it, do not walk away from it. Because you will never heal until you face your trauma, not as an enemy, but as a teacher. Until you realize that your healing is not about forgetting what happened. It's about remembering who you are beneath what happened, and who you are is someone who was never meant to live trapped in the past, but reborn through it. You are not your trauma. You are the fire it forged.